I lived and worked in a national park for 3 months, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. I share a lot of the things I do on the internet, but I kind of disappeared for a couple months when I went to go work in Yosemite National Park. I'm going to tell you guys what I was doing, where I was living, and if I would recommend this experience to all of you. It's kind of always been on my bucket list to go work in a national park, and I had a free summer, so I said, why not? Let's do it. I applied online. The application was so easy. I don't even think they asked for any previous work experience. But a few weeks later, I got a call offering me the job, and about a month later, I was driving out there in my van. So I showed up there, I met my roommates, they gave me the keys, they gave me a tour of where I was going to be living for the next 3 months. So there's definitely a hierarchy of housing there. So your first year, you're normally going to be put into a 2-person tent. So as you get seniority with better positions and you just stay there longer, you can move up to a dorm, there's houses. So I knew that I was going to be starting in a tent, which I was totally fine with. When I got there though, I actually got put into a 4-person tent. So I had 3 other roommates and we had a really nice big tent. I thought the tent was great until I didn't, which I will get into that a little bit later. But the tent is super cozy. We had 2 heaters in it, so you could really crank the heat at night. It had beds, and then it had just really bare-boned wardrobe, furniture. Yosemite is huge, and so there's gonna be many different areas where people live. And so I can only speak to where I lived. So there we had a bunch of shared facilities, a laundry room with nice new washing machines. I never had to wait to wash or dry my clothes, which was great. We had a shared bathroom / shower room. The shower pressure was 12 out of 10. Always had hot water. The bathrooms were cleaned every single day, or almost every single day. So everything was just always really clean and nice. Yeah, no complaints there. I do have some complaints because the kitchen setup was pretty gross. My biggest complaint there was just the fridge, and I think this would have been better. So there was supposed to be 2 and 1 broke, so we all just had to shove all of our stuff into the one fridge, and people just have bags with their names written on it and bins. Very overwhelming. It was honestly fine. It's just it took about a month for me to be able to even claim any space in the fridge. I eventually got a bin in there that I shared with my other roommates. And anytime you wanted your cream cheese or something, it was just in the very, very back of the fridge. And you had to pull everybody else's stuff out to get to it. And it just wasn't very convenient. If you're planning on working in Yosemite, I just would go into it knowing that you're not going to be making really any meals. Just don't even try. That is if you're living in the tents or the cabins. If you had a dorm or something, I don't know, you could probably make something work. The kitchens also had cupboards, and it took me a couple weeks to get a cupboard too, that again I shared with my roommates. One thing about Yosemite is that you have to be very careful about where you keep your food. You can't just have your food in your car, you can't have your food in your tent. All of your food needs to be secured in either the kitchen room or in your bear box. So I'll kind of sidetrack and talk about the bear stuff because it is a really big part about Yosemite. The bears in Yosemite are black bears. They are very scareable. You can see one on the trail and you can just be boo, and it will run away. They are for the most part scared of humans. And that is because all of these rules that are in Yosemite to keep the bears safe and then also keep us safe in the process. So a long time ago, the bears in Yosemite used to come into all of the dumpsters, into the little camps, and they would eat everyone's food, and they would break into cars, tents, and things like that because they smelled food, and it was easier to steal human food than find their own in the wild. But since then, now Yosemite has all these rules. It always has to be locked up at night in these giant metal bear boxes. Side note, it's not just food, it's literally anything that smells. So your deodorant, your shampoo, your contact solution, anything that makes a smell that the bears would want to eat or get into or just be curious about. And again, that's mostly to keep the bears safe, because if they start getting a little too close to humans, not afraid of humans anymore, the park rangers end up having to kill those bears because then it's now a threat to humans. But as long as you follow the rules that the park sets up for you, you're good on the bear stuff. And lastly, on the shared facilities topic, I just wanted to say that there is a community center, and this is where there's a gym for all of the employees to use. There's a yoga studio. This is where you can get all of your packages delivered, things like that. And this is supposedly where there is an internet connection. And this is honestly where a lot of the source of frustration came for me for Yosemite, and that is because there is an entire community of people living in Yosemite, and there is zero to very limited cell service, so you can't even call your family for more than like 2 minutes without the call dropping, and there's 100% no service to post a 20-minute YouTube video to the internet. So originally I was super psyched to be able to have kind of a detox from the internet and just actively and intentionally walk over to the community center if I needed to post a video. I wanted to really have that relationship where I could use the internet, but I had to walk to it and like work a little bit for it. But unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, it just didn't work at all. So I remember like trying to pay bills like online, like my car insurance or whatever, and just being so frustrated because I couldn't even open my email to like pay a bill. And then you gotta think that at the time I was posting videos very consistently every week. So it was kind of a bummer for me because I am a content creator and I wanted to keep up with showing you guys what I was doing at Yosemite. But also breaks from the internet and from the outside world are good too. So it's pros and cons. If you're thinking about working in Yosemite, I would say if you have any sort of like side hustle or part-time job that requires internet, it's a no. Or find some way to like get the internet, I don't know, like a hotspot, or honestly my hotspot didn't even work, so I don't know. And then one more note on that is that if you live in one of the little cabins or in the apartment buildings or any other housing but the tents, you can pay for internet. All right, so let's get into my actual job. First, I just want to say that I did not work for the national park. So the way that this works is that there is the national park, and then there are concessionaires that the national parks work with. And those concessionaires are the privately owned companies that run all of the hospitality in Yosemite. So that's usually like the hotels, the lodge, the gift shops, the stores, the coffee shops, the bars. All of the things that don't relate to the actual park are usually run by the concessionaires. So the company that does all the hospitality inside Yosemite National Park is called Aramark. They run a bunch of other things. And I think most employees can agree that it sucks working for them. It's just a big business, it's a big corporation, it is what it is. But on a similar note, I just wanted to say that like a lot of people live in Yosemite. It is like a small town. There are of course a ton of seasonal people that come in and work at like the gift shops and the restaurants like me, but there's also people that work in like the warehouse that does all of the shipping and receiving out to all of the different stores and restaurants. And then there's people that work in like housing that keep all of the housing units like up and running. There's people that work in the garage that keep all of the company vehicles running, and then also all of the buses running. There's even a library in there, there's a post office in there, there's a church, a courthouse. Like it is a small town in the valley of Yosemite. A lot of people work there all year, even in the snow. And then there are people like me come in for like 3 months. Maybe you're in college, you just come for the summer, or maybe you're just doing this for fun for a couple months. And that just makes up part of the people that live in Yosemite. And then another thing I wanted to say to kind of set the stage before I tell you about the specifics of my job is that Yosemite is a madhouse, especially in the summer. That is the peak season. Everyone wants to come in the summer because it's beautiful. I mean, everyone has a right to go to Yosemite, and everyone should because it is stunning, it's beautiful. But because of that, it's insanely busy. The traffic to get into the park is insane. Sometimes you're waiting like 4+ hours to just get into the park. And then every time you go to a restaurant, the line is gonna be out the door. The gift shop lines are gonna be out the door. There is like no parking anywhere. There are people parking like in the meadows, which is totally illegal. People getting parking tickets, people everywhere breaking all the rules. And yeah, just know that. So I worked at a gift shop that also kind of doubled as a camp store because it's near a lot of the campgrounds. Half of it was like t-shirts and mugs, and the other half was firewood, ice, groceries, and a lot of beer and liquor. I was a team lead there, which basically means like a cashier when I needed to be, but most of the time I was kind of doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff in the back. I was working on inventory a lot, and mostly my job was processing all of the deliveries, and that all comes in from the warehouse, and I basically had to just go through, make sure that everything that they said was coming actually did come, that nothing got lost in the process, that everything was just counted and added into inventory. So I really liked my job for the most part because I had a little bit of interaction with the public, but I would say the majority of the time I was in the back working on more of that stuff I was telling you about. Unfortunately, the worst part about the job was definitely the customers. I mean, I've worked retail before. I'm sure a lot of you guys have worked retail too. There's definitely just things that come with working with retail that are just part of the job. I had been a little bit removed from retail for a couple years. The last 5 summers I've been farming on beautiful remote flower and vegetable farms, and so it was a little bit of a shock to be back in the retail tourism space where you're getting a bunch of dumb questions. People are very angry at you personally when you don't have their size of shirt or you're out of firewood. It just tended to be a lot of really frustrated people that were frustrated because of the whole entire busyness of Yosemite. So they'd been waiting in lines all day, they had been looking for parking all day, they got lost, they had to wait to get on the bus for 10 hours or whatever. So they're already frustrated, and then they're coming into your store, and then you also have to let them down in one small insignificant way. And yeah, you kind of just get a lot of people that are very angry. That being said, I just tried to remind myself that the first time I came to Yosemite, I was also very frustrated because there's just a lot going on. It's just kind of a very overwhelming place when you're coming in the peak season. And so I just always tried to remind myself that I too was a confused and lost tourist the first time I came. So I worked full-time there, 40 hours, and then I had 2 days off. I usually had my mornings to myself, and then I would go into work. I would work till about 10. Some people have specific jobs where they have 3-day weekends. So if you're really into backpacking especially, I would recommend trying to get a job that has the 3-day weekend where you can work 10-hour days and you can have longer days but longer weekends, so you can actually go backpacking and you can do all the fun stuff that you came to Yosemite to do. People were also angry in some of my short form content that I was riding my bike home in the dark. The shop closes at 10. I'm usually getting home at around 11. The only way to get there back to my tent is to ride my bike, so I don't know what to tell you there. I will say this is just one tidbit. If you are planning on riding your bike home after dark, get a bike light because there are no street lights in Yosemite. Obviously, there's beautiful stars and wildlife and things like that, so there's no street lights. It's completely pitch black. And I remember the first time I was trying to get home, I got lost because I could barely see. I only had my phone flashlight, and then on the way home my phone flashlight died. Trying to find my way home in the dark, it was horrible. And then the next weekend I went into the nearest town, which is 2 hours away. I bought a bike light, and the next day somebody stole the bike light off of my bike. So if you want to work in Yosemite, A, buy a bike light, and B, take the bike light off every day because people are gonna steal it. You can also use your headlamp. That's what I ended up doing because there was no way I was gonna buy another bike light after that situation. Also, it's pretty obvious, but I would highly recommend bringing a bike to Yosemite. Driving your car is not an option to get around the valley, and so having a bike is the way to go. So that's a little bit about my job. Just wanted to quickly mention also that some of the perks of my job were that I got lots and lots of expired sandwiches. So anytime something is expired, the staff gets first dibs on all of that. So I ate a lot of expired sandwiches. I also ate a lot of cracked ice cream cones. The ice cream cones that go in those big coolers. For some reason, those break very easily, and so customers would come in and return their ice cream cones. And if you're into that, you can eat the ice cream cones. All right, so let's get into the good part, the part why I was there, the part that makes you want to live in a national park in the first place. And that is all of your days off and all of the time that you're not spent working in the gift shop. Luckily, one of my roommates had the same days off as me, and so we would coordinate pretty much everything we wanted to do. We had a whole list of things that we wanted to get through by the end of the summer. Yosemite is huge, so there's so much to do. Like, you're never gonna cross everything off your list, but we definitely tried. So we did a ton of hiking, but we also did a lot of chilling. So because you live there, you don't really need to be like, okay, I'm gonna do this, 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 and this. You can actually just like have a picnic outside. You can go to the river with a pack of beers and hang out. There's like waterfalls that you can swim in. You can raft down the river. So there's really something for everybody there, and because you're living there, you don't have as much pressure on it to hit everything in one day. I know the first time I came to Yosemite, I was only there for 48 hours, and then living there for 3 months, my whole perception of the park is completely different because I had more time to experience just all the little things that it has to offer. There are a bunch of events also for employees. So I got to see one of my favorite outdoor activists. I got to see Patty Gonia perform. I competed in a cornhole tournament. Just lots of random like things for the staff to build community. Another great thing was that on the weekends, sometimes we would go into town, and the nearest town with like a grocery store is like 2 hours away. So sometimes me and my roommates would make a trip of it, and we would stock up on a bunch of groceries, and then we would go thrifting. We would get like all of our favorite fast food because there's no fast food in the valley. I remember we were really excited to go see Barbie because we hadn't been to a movie theater obviously all summer. We hadn't even watched a movie all summer because we didn't have like Netflix or anything like that. So it was really fun to go into town and just kind of return to civilization. There's also a lot of things in the area that are definitely a drive, but you could go to like Big Sur for the weekend, or you could go to Sequoia. There's also Mammoth Lakes. There were like hot springs that we went to. So even if you want to leave the valley on the weekends, there's so much to do in the area. So overall, I had a really great experience. It was like summer camp, and I just met some really great people. Like, my roommates were amazing. I had amazing coworkers. It was just a once-in-a-life experience to be able to live in this park and have some of the most beautiful backdrops be my, ride to the post office, like looking up at Yosemite Falls while I'm going to go eat lunch at this food court or whatever. Like, it was just surreal, and I don't think there was ever a time that I looked up and I was like, oh yeah, that's just what it is. Like, every day my jaw was dropped. I was constantly like, oh my God, like, what is my life right now? Like, this is amazing. I did unfortunately have something happen to me that kind of tainted my whole outlook on the experience. Basically, I had a mouse infestation in my tent, and while that might sound like, oh, you had to deal with some mice, well, the mice in Yosemite actually carry a virus that can be transmitted to humans. It can be life-threatening. I'm fine. I am good, but I did have a really negative experience because it made life in Yosemite really hard for a couple weeks. While I don't really want that to be the focus of this video, I'm gonna make a whole separate video on exactly what happened with the mice thing, because again, I kind of want to keep like these two videos separate because I really did have a great time and experience, but I'm also not going to ignore that happened to me, and I just want to go into detail there. It was just horrible. It was horrible. If you want to watch that video next week, make sure that you are subscribed. And if you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments below. Maybe I'll touch on them in that video, or I'll just respond to you. I definitely do recommend this experience. I thought it was great. I really did. I just wish some things would have gone a little differently, but that is life, I guess. Hopefully you know a little bit more about living in Yosemite National Park. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.